you for joining us on today's podcast brought to you by the Northampton Prevention Coalition and Northampton Community Television. I'm your host, Ananda Lennox. Good morning, everyone. This is Ananda from the Northampton Prevention Coalition, and today I am sitting down with Aaron Pitrat, who is an alumni of Northampton High School and currently a student at UMass?
UMass transfer student.
Excellent. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming in.
Absolutely.
So Aaron is someone who we heard about through Jeff Harness at Cooley Dickinson Hospital. He is, as I already mentioned, a graduate of Northampton High School and is also someone who's in recovery.
Yes, ma'am.
How many years now, Aaron?
It'll be 4 years in August.
And may I ask how old you are?
25.
Okay.
Just turned 25 about a month ago.
All right. Happy birthday and congratulations on 4 years. Couple months ago, I sent out a Survey Monkey to Northampton High School students and asked them if they had the opportunity to sit down with someone who was in recovery and could ask them anything, what would they most want to ask? So we compiled about just under 100 questions. We're going to sit down and go through some of them with Aaron, but he has a story to tell in and of itself. And so we're going to start kind of at the beginning. Does that sound good?
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
Right. So Aaron, you grew up in Northampton.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit what your childhood was like, what your family was like?
So my parents were married.
Mm-hmm.
My dad had bought my grandfather's house up on South Main Street in Florence. I started going to Leeds Elementary, followed by JFK, followed by Northampton High School. When I was growing up, my mother did her best to take care of us. She worked a lot, but she was a saint. My mother's still a saint. She does everything she could possibly do. I'm eternally grateful for that woman. I grew up so I have alcoholism and I have drug addiction in my family.
One side, both sides?
Both sides. It's rampant. I didn't know about it for a really long time. I kind of could tell, but I didn't really know too much.
Yeah.
So I ended up finding out later that my mom's side has a lot of it, and my father's side also has a lot of it. I had a grandmother pass away from falling down a staircase and smashing her head.
Wow.
So I mean, it's played a serious role in my family, and through a series of events, my parents ended up getting divorced when I was around 4 years old. My father continued to live in Northampton, and my mother moved us out to the East Hampton area. So I would be back and forth. I would be in Northampton on the weekends and then back to East Hampton. Mm-hmm. So that really wasn't that bad. I didn't consider that as like a big deal at the time. Mm-hmm. But looking back on it, it clearly has some effect on people. Not to the extent where like it's going to make you into a drug addict or alcoholic one day. But I mean, at a young age, it does have an effect on you. It had both positive and negative effects because I saw my mother go to school and go back and get her LPN, and I saw her work like 60 hours a week to keep a 2-bedroom apartment roof over our head. And, my father obviously helped out as well with child support and whatnot. But for the most part, it was me, my sister versus the world, Mm-hmm. That was back in the day when my curfew was the streetlights. I'm dating myself a little bit, but I'm not that far away from the high school age, I guess. Mm-hmm. And things were good for the most part. I just remember feeling like I didn't really know. No one really knows what they're going to do with their life, I guess. But I literally had no clue. No clue whatsoever. I was like just always trying to fit in with whoever I could find. I guess I was kind of looking for guidance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
I didn't have too much like direct direction,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes any sense. So I just did what I could to try and fill in the gaps of time, I guess.
What were you into as a kid?
So I played a lot of sports.
Mm-hmm.
I played soccer. I played baseball. I ended up quitting baseball and joining the lacrosse team, which was probably one of the best outlets I ever had. Mm-hmm. I could show up, let all my energy out because I was a really, really energetic kid, and go home and relax and feel good about myself afterwards. And so I would say the first thing in reference to any substances, drugs, alcohol, anything like that, was when I was still younger, still at the adolescent age.
Like middle school, high school?
I would say middle school.
Okay.
So, and it's not even going to be what you think it's going to be. So I got, if it was found out that I was very energetic, very compulsive, very, fast paced, and I got tested for ADHD. So the first quote unquote substance, and I know this is a very controversial subject, and this is my opinion. This isn't the opinion of anyone else, I promise. But I was put on amphetamine salts as a kid, which if you look at, I mean, most people don't think that that's a big deal. Most people look at it and they're like, oh, okay, whatever, it treats ADHD. There's a reason that they banned it in the 90s.
When you say amphetamine salts, do you mean Adderall or do you mean a different form of
Adderall?
Okay.
It's
right.
generic Adderall as amphetamine salts. So I started essentially taking speed every day. And that was like the first kind of understanding that a substance could do something for me.
Like alter your mood.
Yeah, it completely changed who I was. I was this energetic, really happy, talkative kid, and I turned into this very stone-faced, I would pay attention. I would definitely pay attention. You can put anything in front of me, I'll pay attention to it, I promise you. But much of my personality and emotion was gone, and people noticed it. So, leading up into adolescence, I found it really difficult to fit in socially on my own. It wasn't really too hard as far as like where I was already classed to be. Like I kind of fit right in. One of my best friends since I was like 2 years old, he was like always a popular kid, I feel like. And I was kind of just got like dragged along into that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like by any means that I chose. And when I was early teenage years, not even, probably like 12, 13 years old, I started smoking weed for the first time.
So would this be like 8th grade or after 8th grade?
I would say probably around 8th grade. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was 7th, 8th grade. I smoked weed for the first time.
I don't want to interrupt your story too much, but sometimes things crop up for me. How'd you get it?
Oh, kids at school.
Yeah. And in middle school?
Yeah, JFK.
And where'd they get it from?
Usually they would get it from people in Meadowbrook and just bring it to school, or they would get it from their brothers, their sisters. A lot, honestly, kids used to steal it from their parents.
Yeah.
And bring it to school.
Yeah.
So
social access from all sorts of various
social
things.
access from all over.
Why does Meadowbrook get a special designation, though?
Oh, because I knew a few people that would who lived in Meadowbrook, and they would literally just be able to walk over, like a house over, and bring it to school with them.
Wow.
Yeah, like first thing in the morning, they could go knock on someone's door and then bring it to school with them. That's like the most prevalent memory that I have.
Yeah. So how often were you smoking pot, like around the age of 12 and 13?
So when I was in 8th grade, I would do it on the weekends. Like every weekend, me and another friend of mine would, go and do our thing, and at parties and stuff like that. But it wasn't
parties at that age. I'm so naive.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. I remember there was some girl's parents went away, and there was it was probably one of the craziest parties I've ever been to was in like 8th grade when this girl's parents went away, and she just invited like the whole high school, the whole middle school. It was nuts.
Wow.
Yeah, some kid got thrown through a glass coffee table.
Wow.
But those are the kind of situations you find yourself in, you don't even mean to. The whole marijuana thing. So that turned into, it's really, really easy to justify smoking weed as a kid. It's not, I shouldn't say as a kid, that sounds so bad. As a preteen or teenager, it's really, really easy to sorry.
Just use your own natural language. I hear what you, go ahead.
It's really easy to justify it because you talk to anybody about it and they say, no, it's medical. No, it's good for you. It helps so many people. Have you seen what it does for like epilepsy victims and things like that? Which I completely agree with. Don't get me wrong. But those kind of justifications should not be registered by a teenager. They do not need it. Their brain is a powerhouse, and they're choosing to do this over taking care of themselves, listening to their parents. I mean, they call it, oh my God, there's a word for it. Erickson termed a word for it, and I forgot what the hell it is. something with an M, but it's essentially deviance from what your parents raised you to do, and we all go through it. And so these teenagers will start smoking weed, and they'll get all these justifications and all this research that it's not a bad thing. And people always say marijuana is a gateway drug. Funny thing about that, you and me were talking about it earlier. I don't necessarily think it's a gateway drug. More so, I think it's like a doorway drug, because it opens the door to the possibility of other substances. It makes you think. You'll smoke weed and you'll experience whatever you experience. Some people have really bad reactions to it. Some people have positive reactions to it. And you'll see the consequence versus the reward. It's very evident. And it makes it really easy for teenagers to now have that doorway open where they're able to have that curiosity of, well, a substance did this for me. I wonder what that would do in small quantities. And I feel like the more that a teenager smokes weed, the more open they become to other possibilities. And that's why it really is a doorway drug. That's why I believe that it's a problem having teenagers smoke weed, aside from like the frontal lobe not even being developed yet, not developing until way later on. The Supreme Court actually just ruled that you can't execute someone under the age of 18 because their frontal lobe isn't fully developed, and that's the part of the brain that allows you to make proper decisions. So we've got these kids who have like a half-developed frontal lobe, and they're making the decision to smoke weed, and it's altering their brain chemistry. It's altering the way that they're able to think and process and understand information. But they think they have the decision-making ability to regulate it, and it's almost comical. And I think it's insane that anyone would do, like, hindsight's 20/20, right? I think it's absolutely insane that I would ever do that to myself. With the brain that I have now, thinking back of what my ultimate potential could have been, to see that I sold myself short for something like that is one of the most depressing thoughts that I have in my life.
Wow.
You know, you can look back on it. I guarantee that no one's going to care if you smoked weed or not when you're 25 years old. I promise.